It's been a little while. The past few years have been kind of busy. I did start my own Ghost in History tour company, and a lot's changed since then. When I first started this channel, I tried to make it this big production. I love Savannah history and its legends, and I wanted you to love it as much as I did, and still do. But all the work that I was putting into writing these scripts, researching, filming, editing, going back and finding B-roll about killed me. So I'm kind of scaling back. I will still be doing stories about Savannah's weird history and ghosts. I just won't be making them these big productions right now. Eventually, I would love to go back and do that again. But I am one person, and there's only so much I can do by myself and still retain my sanity. On top of doing my Ghost in History tours, on top of the freelance writing projects I have, on top of content creation for both TikTok and Instagram, it's a lot. You may have noticed that last week I posted a video about a walk I went on with one of the adoptable dogs from Renegade Paws Rescue. And that is something new that I'm doing. I have partnered with Renegade Paws Rescue, one of our local rescue groups, and every Monday on TikTok at 8:15 Eastern, I will be walking an adoptable dog. You'll get to see Savannah, you'll get to hear about a cute little puppy. It's a win-win for everybody. Now, not everybody can tune into those lives, so I have decided that I'm going to download those and repost them here on YouTube. Those will be in a separate playlist, but I still feel that they're pretty on brand for what I do anyway. Now, since I am scaling back on the big production aspect of it, that frees me up to do a lot more. So I would like to hear from you. What are some topics you're interested in me covering? Are there aspects of Savannah's history that you don't know anything about? Are there some ghost stories you'd like me to do a deeper dive into? Would you like to hear more about things to see and do in Savannah? I am more than happy to discuss all of those things. I will also be talking a little bit more about the paranormal community and some of the pros and cons with the paranormal community as to how it relates to Savannah. So going forward, yes, I'm still going to be here. I'm still going to be making a lot of the same content that you're used to. It's just going to look a little different. Welcome back to Salt Waves Spanish Moss, and today we are tackling the top 5 haunted restaurants in Savannah, or at least the top 5 that I like to talk about. Starting off with number 5, the Pirate's House. Now, if you've been to Savannah, you've probably gone to eat here. It is a very popular place, and of course, obviously, very pirate themed. Now, how piratey the Pirate's House actually is heavily debated. The golden age of piracy ended in 1720. Savannah wasn't established until 1733, so we were established well after the golden age of piracy ended, which is when you see people like Blackbeard. But people still claim that you can see the ghosts of pirates roaming the halls of the Pirate's House. We did have pirates, in Savannah, but more often than not, we're talking about French privateers. Now, the main building where the Pirate's House is, has been added onto over the years. As to when that original building was constructed, I'm not really sure. I've seen a lot of dates thrown around, and because it was a building that was added onto, I think that's created a lot of really nebulous timelines. Suffice it to say, the original building was built as a gardener's cottage. That is where the gardener for the trustees' garden nearby was going to live. Over the years, it has been added onto. It was turned into some type of tavern at one point, and in the 1950s was turned into the restaurant that we know today. Interesting side note, the upstairs where there's a little gift room was actually a jazz club in the 1990s, which is kind of interesting. Now, I mentioned that some people have seen pirates' ghosts there, and they have, but people have also seen some other interesting ghosts. I had a follower over on TikTok who said that she ate there once and she saw a woman in a pink Chanel suit walking through the dining room. And I'm not sure what about this woman screamed ghost to her, but she said that was a ghost, not a living, breathing person. Another person I spoke to said that her mother had worked there, and when she was closing up the gift shop on the second floor at night, sometimes these little airplanes that they had hanging from the ceiling would spin around when they weren't being blown by the air conditioner. Now, I do have some friends who have worked at the Pirate's House, and they did say that some strange things had happened, but most of them agree that it's not number 5 that's the most haunted, it's my number 1, which we'll get to in a second. Now on to number 4, which may surprise some people. My number 4 is a place called Betty Bombers. Betty Bombers is a World War II themed restaurant inside American Legion Post 135. Now, the building it's in is very old. It was originally built in 1913 for the Chatham Artillery before finally being turned into the American Legion around the 1940s. Now, if you go to visit the American Legion Hall today, you'll see a couple of different things. As soon as you walk through the door, on your left, there's an office. On your right, there's a bar. If you continue walking, you will see Betty Bombers on your right. And beyond that is a staircase that goes upstairs to the old ballroom. Now, that ballroom was used for several different things. Obviously, it was used for military reasons. They would have functions up there. But it was also used for dances that other people in the community could attend. The previous owner of Betty Bombers said that one day he was working and he spotted a little girl running towards that staircase. He went to go follow her because kids aren't supposed to be running around unchecked. And as he gets to the staircase, he sees this little girl in old-fashioned clothing, his description, not mine, running up the stairs and disappearing. That obviously freaked him out. He wasn't expecting to see a little girl ghost disappear right in front of him, not at the American Legion Hall. The next day, he goes to the office to talk to one of the workers and mentions that he saw what he thought was a ghost, and before he could say anything else, the worker there said, "You saw the little girl, didn't you?" So I'm not sure who this little girl is or why she haunts this place, but it's an interesting story, isn't it? Number 3, the Old Pink House Restaurant. Over on Reynolds Square, you'll see this bright pink house that is a restaurant called the Old Pink House. This building actually started off as a private residence. It was started in 1771 and finished in 1789. It was originally built for James Habersham Jr. and his family. James Habersham obviously had a lot of money because he was able to afford this amazing home. And he lived in that home until 1799 when he passed away. Since his passing, that home's been used for a lot of different things. It was a bank at one point, a lawyer's office, a bookshop, a tea room, before finally being turned into a restaurant in 1971. Now, if you've gone to visit the Old Pink House, down in the cellar, you can still see the old bank vaults there. Eventually, an addition was added onto the building, and they have a ballroom upstairs now. In December of 2018, they had a bunch of Christmas trees set up there, and one of them actually caught on fire, damaging the building. Fortunately, everyone made it out of the building okay, no one was injured, but that was a really scary experience for some people who worked there. It may have also been a scary experience for someone who haunts that place as well. Some people have described seeing a woman or a young girl wearing white floating through the ballroom. One of my friends actually saw this young girl and mentioned her and said that the young girl kept flashing her images of fire. And I thought maybe it was the 2018 fire, but my friend said, no, that's not what it looked like. It looked like it was an older fire. And I wonder if that ghost was re-traumatized by the 2018 fire, if that is what killed her to begin with. It's not something we talk about super often. We don't think about spirits being re-traumatized by things, but I think it happens every once in a while. It's not just the woman in white. Other spirits have been seen around the Pink House, including the original owner, James Habersham Jr. He's been spotted in the tavern downstairs plenty of times. When two of my friends, Rebecca the Ghost Guide and Catherine, some of you may be familiar with here on YouTube or maybe on TikTok, they came to visit me and I was showing them around town. We went into the tavern to get a drink, and as we're sitting at the bar, both of them described seeing a man sitting in the corner, and I recognized that description as James Habersham Jr. They said that he looked very friendly and was just hanging out, which is what plenty of other people have described as well. Even people who work there say that he's actually a pretty chill ghost. So if you're looking for a place to work in Savannah and you're worried about working in a haunted restaurant, I recommend the Old Pink House. Number 2, Husk. Husk is more commonly known around Savannah, at least in the ghosty circles, as 12 West Oglethorpe. When I first moved to Savannah in 2010, it was this very spooky looking building. Looks totally different from what it looks like today. And I heard all sorts of stories about this place. I heard that the original owner was a doctor who lost his family to yellow fever during an outbreak of yellow fever here in the city and went mad with grief, walled himself up in his bedroom and starved himself to death. Another story that I heard was the story of the Phantom Traveler. A lot of people would say that you could walk past that building at night and see this man in 1920s or 30s clothing leaning up against one of the columns. Some people would even actually talk to him and ask him, "Are you okay? Do you need anything?" And he'd say, "I'm just waiting on my ride." They'd walk on, turn around, and he'd be gone. And of course, there was a usual story of demons roaming the hallways, but it's pretty par for the course in Savannah haunted buildings, right? The truth of this home is that it was originally built in 1898. It was a private residence for a man named Byrne Gordon. He built it for his family. Byrne was a bank president and a shipping magnate, and the family continued to live there until his first wife, Elizabeth, died in 1905 from some type of illness. I haven't been able to track down specifically what she died from. I just know that it was rather sudden, and they expected her to recover, and then she died, and everyone was really broken up about it. Apparently, Byrne was so broken up about it that he sold the home and moved to Canada. In 1908, the home was sold to the Elks Lodge. The Elks are a fraternal order, kind of similar to the Masons, but also not quite, like similar but different. And they continued to use that building for the next 80 years. Eventually, the home was turned into a performing arts school before finally being abandoned in 1985. And it sat vacant for a very long time. It even caught on fire at one point, leading to smoke damage and fire damage in parts of the building, which made it even spookier looking than what it had looked like before. In 2018, the restaurant Husk opened it up after doing extensive renovations, and honestly, they've done a phenomenal job with that building. So even though the stories that I heard on the ghost tours about that place weren't true, it's not to say that building isn't haunted. A few years ago, I went to eat there with my family, and I was not having the best day. I was exhausted, I was hot, I had just been traveling, and I really just wanted to eat some food and go home and go to sleep. So we sat at the bar upstairs in the ballroom, and I was sitting at the end of the bar. I had my arms crossed, I was feeling kind of pouty, and as I'm sitting there, I feel somebody pinch the back of my arm. And I turn around because I'm like, who does that to an adult? And no one's there. Weird, but okay. Later on that evening, I go to use the restroom and I'm walking down this hallway past an employee's area and I feel somebody staring at me. I take a couple of steps back because I do have friends who work in the restaurant industry, so I thought maybe it was one of them. And I go to poke my head into the employee's area and no one is there. So 12 West Oglethorpe, more commonly known as Husk now, isn't haunted by the ghost of a doctor who lost his family to yellow fever. There's also probably not a demon in there, but it is haunted by something. Now, my number one favorite haunted restaurant in Savannah is Moon River Brewing Company. Now, what we know as Moon River Brewing Company today actually started off as the City Hotel. It opened up in 1821, and for a few decades, it was the place to stay. A lot of visiting celebrities and officials stayed there. Now, the hotel continued to function until 1864 when it closed. Since then, the building went through a lot of different changes, like a lot of these other places have. It was used as a warehouse, it was storage space, it was also an office supply store for a little bit. Eventually, in the 90s, it was sold, and in 1999, reopened as Moon River Brewing Company, which is what we know it as today. Now, over the years, plenty of people who have worked there and even eaten there have had some experiences with some of the ghosts who haunt Moon River. One of the famous ghosts is a man named James Stark. Now, James died in a fight with a doctor here in Savannah. James was a bit of a gambler and was caught saying some very anti-Semitic things about Dr. Philip Minus. Dr. Philip Minus wasn't going to stand for that, so he challenges James Stark to a duel, and the two of them couldn't really work it out. There were fights over where is it going to be, what weapons are we going to use, what day is it going to be on, and they couldn't really seem to agree on anything. And Dr. Philip Minus apparently thought that that just meant that it was going to fizzle out. Fine, that's fine. But then James Stark kept saying stuff, and Dr. Minus had enough of it. So he confronts James Stark in the city hotel and shoots and kills him. Now, if it gives you an idea of how little people like James Stark, Dr. Minus was taken to trial and everybody just kind of decided that James Stark had it coming. He had it coming! But James has stuck around Moon River. I have heard from employees that they kind of don't even say his name in the building because they are worried that that will draw his attention. One of my friends used to work there, and she said that James Stark actually followed her home and stayed in her apartment for a few days. Apparently he kept messing with things and annoying her cats. Finally, she confronted him and told him he had to go back to Moon River, and he did. It's not just ghosts like James Stark hanging around annoying people. There's also a little boy named Toby, who people have seen. The owner's sister told me about an experience she had down in the basement. She had brought her young child down there. They were checking on something with the brewery section. And as she's down there, her child points to a corner and says, "Baby?" And she said, "No, we're not dealing with ghosts today." So she picks up her kid and they leave. And she believes that her child saw Toby down in the basement. It's not just Toby, though. There's also a little girl that kitchen staff have seen. One person I talked to said that she was working in the kitchen one day and sees this little girl come in. And, you know, you're not supposed to have kids in the kitchen there. So she turns to tell the little girl, "I'm sorry, baby, you gotta go." And the girl just disappeared right in front of her. There's another famous ghost who haunts Moon River. The woman in white. Yes, we've talked about women in white already in this episode. Apparently, when you get to the afterlife, you have very few color selections when it comes to outfits, and white seems to be a really popular dress color for ghosts. Plenty of people have seen this woman in white wandering the building that used to be a hotel. She's been spotted on the first floor, but more commonly she's been spotted upstairs. Now, the interesting thing about upstairs is that that's really only available to employees. Yes, you can book some paranormal investigations that will take you up there, but for the most part, if you're up there, you're an employee, and that's it. One person I spoke to said that he was upstairs getting some stuff from storage to bring down, and while he was up there, he heard a woman crying. Now, one of his fellow employees had been going through a nasty breakup, and he had been trying to encourage her when he saw her having a rough time. He assumed it was that employee. So as he's gathering things up, he's yelling over his shoulder like, "Girl, you're too good for him. He doesn't know what he's missing. You're going to find somebody amazing after this." You know, the usual things that you tell your friends when they're going through a nasty breakup. And he turns around to leave and realizes no one's there. When he gets down to the first floor, he sees that employee and he asks her, "Were you just upstairs?" And she said no. And that's when he realized he had given a pep talk to the woman in white. I guess we all need a pep talk every now and then. I suppose ghosts need pep talks too. I had my own encounter at Moon River. I'm also a freelance writer, and I was writing a piece talking about how some of these tours in town were recovering after the pandemic shutdown, and I followed a tour down into the basement. The tour guide's telling us all the spooky stories and stuff. He did a great job. And after he's done, he invites the people, his guests, to wander around the basement and take some photos. Maybe he'll catch something, right? Well, there's a fireplace down in the basement that has a mirror above it. So I walk over there because I was going to take a selfie in the spooky mirror, right? As I'm starting to walk over there, I feel a hand press up against my chest, as if somebody's warning me away from that area. And I didn't know who that was or what they were warning me away from. But, you know, I was going to listen to that. I appreciate a gentle warning. I hope y'all enjoyed this episode. There will be more to come in the next few weeks. And as I stated at the beginning, I will be adding some videos here and there of some of my live walks, walking adoptable dogs from Renegade Paws Rescue. So I hope you enjoy that too. Y'all stay safe, and I'll see you next time.